She satisfies the reader's curiosity about what comes after defeat in a way almost no other captured monarch does. Zenobia of Palmyra, Queen of the East, conqueror of Egypt, ruler of an empire that stretched from Anatolia to the Nile. In 272 AD, Roman cavalry ran her down on the banks of the Euphrates. She was attempting to flee to Persia. She did not make it. What followed was not execution. Execution would have been simpler. Execution would have ended it. Emperor Aurelian had something else in mind, something Rome had perfected over 5 centuries of conquest. A ceremony so ritualized, so public, so deliberately humiliating, that death would have been a mercy by comparison. Zenobia was kept alive, cleaned, dressed in gold and jewels heavier than she could carry, and paraded through the streets of Rome in chains. This was not cruelty for its own sake, this was policy. And she was not the first. Chapter 1. The Capture. The moment a queen fell into Roman hands, she ceased to be a monarch. She became property. Legally, immediately, completely. The Latin term was preda, plunder. The same word applied to seized grain, confiscated gold, captured livestock. A queen was catalogued alongside the material spoils of conquest, assessed for her value not as a person, but as an object that could be used. Guards were assigned specifically to prevent suicide. Roman commanders knew that captured royalty often preferred death to what awaited them. So they watched. They removed anything sharp, they checked her food for poison. She was fed, kept healthy, sometimes even treated by physicians if the journey had injured her. Also, she could walk through Rome in chains. Chapter 2. The Procession. The Roman triumph was one of the most carefully orchestrated public rituals in the ancient world. It began outside the city walls at dawn. The order of march was fixed by tradition. First came the spoils, carts loaded with plundered treasure, gold, silver, artwork, weapons. Then came the animals, white oxen destined for sacrifice, exotic beasts from the conquered land. Then came the captives. This is where a queen walked. The sources describe Zenobia laden with gold and jewels so heavy she could barely move. This was not a kindness. This was a final mockery. She was dressed in the wealth of her own kingdom, now displayed on her body as proof that it belonged to Rome. She was made to wear her own defeat. The chains were gold as well. Some accounts say she had to be supported by attendants simply to stay upright under the weight. The route wound through the heart of the city, along the Via Sacra, up to the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline. The entire population of Rome lined the streets. A queen who had commanded armies, who had minted coins with her own face, was now an exhibit, a demonstration that no power on earth could resist Rome indefinitely. The procession lasted hours, and at the end of it came the moment every captured monarch dreaded most. Chapter 3. The Choice Rome Made. The route passed a small structure near the Forum, the Tullianum, Rome's oldest prison, a pit carved into the rock beneath the city, a place of execution. As the procession approached, certain captives would be pulled from the line. The leading enemy commander was almost always taken to the Tullianum and strangled. Jugurtha of Numidia died there, Vercingetorix of Gaul died there, but queens were more complicated, some were executed. The queen had served her purpose in the procession. Her death was almost an administrative matter, but some queens were not killed. Zenobia was spared. She was given a villa in Tibur, outside Rome. She lived there for years, possibly decades. Some accounts say she married a Roman senator. Some say she had children who integrated into Roman society. She was absorbed. This was its own kind of erasure. The queen who had defied Rome now lived as a private citizen in a Roman suburb. Her story ended not with defiance, but with quiet assimilation. Rome did not always want martyrs. Sometimes Rome wanted proof that resistance was not just futile, but pointless, that the conquered would eventually become Roman, that their children would grow up speaking Latin, forgetting they had ever been anything else. This was not mercy, this was something more thorough. Chapter 4. The Ones Who Refused. Cleopatra VII understood what awaited her. When Octavian's forces took Alexandria in 30 BC, she knew the triumph was coming. She had watched her sister Arsinoe paraded in chains through Rome years earlier. Cleopatra would not walk that route. The ancient sources favour the story of the asp, a cobra smuggled into her chambers in a basket of figs. The method matters less than the meaning. She chose death over display. She removed herself from the equation before Rome could use her. Octavian was reportedly furious. He had wanted her alive. He had sent men specifically to prevent her suicide. He failed. And so the triumph of Octavian featured something strange. A statue of Cleopatra on her couch, depicted at the moment of death, an effigy where a living queen should have been. This was the only form of resistance left to a captured queen. the refusal to participate. Boudica understood this as well. When her rebellion collapsed after the Battle of Watling Street, she did not flee. She did not negotiate. She took poison. She chose death rather than capture. Not because death in the Tullianum was so terrible, but because the walk itself was unbearable. The procession, the chains, the eyes of 1 million Romans watching a queen reduced to property. Some things are worse than dying. Chapter 5. The Nameless. Zenobia and Cleopatra survive in the historical record because they were exceptional. Their stories were written down, repeated, elaborated over centuries, but they were not alone. Every Roman triumph featured captives. Every major conquest produced queens, princesses, noble women who were transported to Rome for the procession. The sources mention them in passing, if at all. Anonymous figures in the background of someone else's story. The Dacian Wars of Trajan produced triumphs in 102 and 106 AD. The reliefs on Trajan's column show lines of captives, men and women and children being led away from burning villages. The column still stands in Rome. The names of the captives do not survive. For every Zenobia whose story became legend, there were hundreds of women whose humiliation was identical, but whose names disappeared within a generation. Rome did not do this to make a point. Rome did this because it was how things were done. The triumph was a religious ceremony, a political necessity, a public entertainment, and an administrative procedure, all at once. The captives were a required component. Their suffering was structural. Chapter 6. The System That Remained. The Roman triumph continued for centuries. The last recorded triumph was held in 403 AD. The Western Empire would fall within 70 years, but even at the end, even as the system collapsed around them, the Romans were still parading captives through the streets. This is what 5 centuries of tradition produces, a practice so embedded that it continues even when the empire that created it is dying. The queens who walked that route were not victims of madmen. They were processed by a system that had refined humiliation into art. That had made the degradation of the defeated into a civic and religious duty. No individual Roman decided to be cruel to Zenobia. Rome decided, collectively, centuries before she was born, that this is what happened to captured monarchs. She simply walked the route that had been prepared for her. We know what Rome did. We do not know what it was like. The sources are Roman. They describe the triumph from the perspective of the victors. They do not record the interior experience of a queen in chains. What was Zenobia thinking as she walked through Rome? The weight of the gold, the noise of the crowd, the knowledge that this street, this chain, was the end of everything she had built. We cannot know, the sources do not care, and this silence is itself a kind of violence. Empires end, ceremonies fade. The triumph as Rome practiced it has not occurred in 16 centuries. But the logic persists, the public display of defeated enemies, the transformation of persons into symbols, the careful choreography of humiliation. These are not Roman inventions, they are human patterns. Rome refined them, made them legal and religious and expected. We inherit this history, not as guilt, but as knowledge. This is what power looked like when it no longer needed to hide. This is what victory meant when mercy was optional. This is what happened to queens who lost. The chains were gold, the crowds were cheering, the walk was very long, and then the record falls silent, and the queen disappears, and Rome moves on to the next conquest. The stones remember the footsteps. The names, for the most part, do not survive. This has been hidden by time. If this history stayed with you, consider subscribing. There is more to uncover.